Well, it's a wet weather Wednesday around here. Thankfully, so far, we haven't seen any severe weather.
No, but we could see some storms later tonight. That's according to Rich Luderman, who's standing by with our forecast. Rich.
Hey there, Taryn and Roop. Muggy today, but not as hot. Yes, we have seen a couple of rounds of storms cross the area. We're getting a break right now, but notice storms are firing close to Kalamazoo. Also, some spotty storms, northern Indiana and northern Ohio. We'll zoom in with Sky Tracker, and you can see east and west of Toledo along the Ohio Turnpike, some spotty storms, and there's that cluster there well to the west of Battle Creek. It's all quiet for the time being. Live pictures from Mount Clemens, 78 degrees there. Humidity is going to stick around this evening. Some storms will be with us, especially after 7 o'clock, but the big cool down begins tomorrow. Could be a spotty shower chance on Thursday, but the weekend ahead looking very, very nice. We'll check those numbers for you coming up in 10. Roop, Taryn, back to you.
And luckily not over the last 24 hours, but we've had several severe weather events this year that led to widespread power outages.
It's such a frustrating feeling for people who lose power all the time. And, you know, you hear the wind blow and all of a sudden you get worried that the power is going to go next. Now, one lawmaker, though, is taking action. Fox News' Hillary Goldson joins us live with what they plan to do. Hillary.
Roop and Taryn, the timing is probably impeccable here because a new proposal from the Michigan Public Service Commission to address the length of time it takes the state's two largest utilities to get the lights back on after an outage and the significant number of customers who have outage after outage after outage that you mentioned, well, that's coming together. And the plan could mean penalties for the companies if folks are left in the dark too long or too often, no matter what the weather looks like outside.
The taxpayer shouldn't be on the hook for creating a reliable grid. We have a company that's making record profits right now. Reinvest those profits in our community so we have a reliable energy grid.
You don't have to look very far to find people, well, plainly fed up with how often the lights go out when there's bad weather and when we're looking at clear sunny skies. Do you see the outages always attributable to inclement weather, or do they happen sporadically for no reason?
We've had outages on bright, sunny, blue sky days. I've told DTE what's going on. There's really not a clear explanation of why the grid is so unreliable.
State Rep Kevin Coleman from Westland wants to hear from constituents about how recent storms affected them, and specifically wants to know how much they're experiencing outages.
Westland has been the epicenter of the outages in Metro Detroit. Somebody like me, I can light a candle and sit in the dark, I'm okay. But I think about senior citizens, people with medical issues, people who rely on oxygen, medical devices. I want to know how they're making it. How are they understanding and going through this?
The free market would always cater to the consumer. That's the way it's always been.
That's Chris Kobus, the head of the Clean Energy Research Center at Oakland University. What do you think is a solution to improve reliability with DTE?
Yeah, what's a solution? Boy, I'd love to say minimize the government footprint rather than the carbon footprint.
Kobus says the focus in Lansing has been decarbonization instead of reliability.
Essentially, they're replacing very reliable sources with less reliable sources, shrinking the margins for other government goals.
Why would you focus on changing to a carbon neutral footprint if you can't even rely on an electrical grid that stays up and running? It's like we're not doing the basics.
Yeah, isn't that so politics, though? Doing things that don't make a whole lot of sense to the average consumer.
Why not give people in Michigan a choice where available to choose which electric company they go with, DTE or consumers, where they overlap?
I want to get this problem fixed. You know, my power goes out every month or every few weeks. I'm suffering from it, but it's not just about me. It's about the people I represent. It's my job to make sure that we're not just relying on one source for our energy. Maybe we have to look at other options.
Okay, and of course I checked with DTE, who says their customers are demanding and deserve a reliable electric grid, which is true. And that's why they've got a 4-point plan to transform the electric grid to reduce the number and duration of power outages. That includes trimming thousands of miles of trees, updating existing infrastructure, rebuilding significant portions of the grid, and accelerating a transition to what they call a smart grid.
You know,
it takes time.
I know, we all have opinions on this because we've all suffered through it. And a lot of us have had our trees cut shutdown already. But one may ask, since we've all been paying our bills for such a long time, why hasn't the grid been updated all along? I mean, and not that you're having the answer to that right now, but that's an important point to this.
Well, it's one of the questions we've been asking pretty repeatedly of DTE and, of course, the Public Service Commission, which the cheat sheet on that is that they're really the ones who have the control here. And they actually awarded $1.7 million to Liberty Consulting to do an audit. That audit has to be turned in by December 31st. So we'll get an idea of what consumers and DTE are doing. That's a preliminary audit, and then they have a little bit of time to complete the entire investigation by summer of 2024.
Dollars and cents for the people who suffer by this, which is almost everybody. But when they say they'll determine how to give money back to people based on how long and how often these power outages go, that's going to be an interesting algorithm to figure out how long you have to go without power before you get something back.
Yeah, I mean, they've already kind of decided the basics of that. Like if you have outages in some areas for 4 times per year, you might have a certain deduction or some kind of penalty that would apply to both DTE and consumers depending on where it is. So they're kind of figuring that out, but they've got a period of public comment where they're asking for stakeholders, including the people who are the customers, to tell them what they think about this. What is the reasonable way to address this? Because all of us, as we have just said, are in the exact same boat. And we know it doesn't have to be storming to see the lights go out.
That public
And
comment
$35
box
isn't enough, too. They can all agree on that, too.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for the update, Hillary.
Of course.
Well, the UAW president announcing a new warning against all Detroit automakers. President Shawn Fain says if a new deal isn't reached by the time contracts expire next week, the union plans to go on strike against Detroit's Big Three. This strike will not only affect GM, Stellantis, and Ford, but could damage the economy, leading to higher vehicle prices. The UAW continues to push for a better contract with higher pay, shorter hours, and other benefits. The union plans to meet with GM on Thursday.
A brazen act in the Upper Peninsula. A man sets several state police cruisers on fire.
He also shot up the vehicles early this morning and remains on the loose. Fox News' Jessica Dubnak has the latest.
That guy with the gas can, yeah, he should not be at this state police post. He's dousing MSP cruisers with an accelerant. Look what happened next. Flames. Then 4 cruisers destroyed. Doesn't end there, though. This guy decided to grab his rifle and spray the burning SUVs with gunfire.
But we are concerned. Naturally, anybody that's brave enough to go to a state police post and fire on it and light cars on fire is definitely a danger to the community.
Lieutenant Mike Shaw says it happened early Wednesday morning right in the parking lot at the MSP post in Sault Ste. Marie. The fire first, then the firing of the rifle by the suspect wearing camo, driving a silver Honda CR-V. No troopers were there. A neighbor actually spotted the flames and called 911.
It was his intent to shoot at first responders when they arrived on scene. That's one of the things that we look at.
They're still searching for a suspect. The post up there in the Sioux is closed, and for the rest of the posts,
we are doing some behind the scenes things that we won't go into, but there are a lot of robust security systems around state police posts anyways.
The bridges statewide are on alert in case he tries to leave the state. Now this is the second attack on an MSP post.
And there, back in 2002, our Wausau post was actually burned to the ground by somebody that was upset for whatever reason and burned the post down, and he was later convicted for that crime.
For the first part of Wednesday, Michigan State Police had asked folks to limit their visits to the posts as a security measure just to keep traffic down. By Wednesday afternoon, all posts are operating normally, except, of course, the one in the Sioux that remains closed.
We don't believe this was a concentrated attack on state police posts across the state. Can't rule it out yet.
Reporting downtown Detroit, Jessica Dubnak, Fox 2 News.
Well, a major contribution will help bring a state-of-the-art rehab facility to Detroit. The Gilbert Family Foundation has partnered with Henry Ford Health, providing nearly $375 million in grant funding. The two announced today they will be building a 72-bed rehab facility run by Shirley Ryan Ability Lab. The funding will also create a research institute to study neurofibromatosis. Now, Dan Gilbert's son passed away earlier this year due to complications from the genetic disorder. We'll have more on today's developments coming up tonight on Fox 2 News at 6.
We told you a month ago, Republican Mike Rogers is the candidate for the U.S. Senate.
Now, during his first day on the campaign trail, he took a swipe at efforts to have every driver in an electric vehicle. Fox 2's Tim Skubic has the story with its implications on the U.S. auto industry as well.
The Biden administration is on a mission to slice into the carbon emissions across this country, and moving the motoring public into electric vehicles is a key component in that mission. However, this Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate says there is one thing wrong with that policy.
People can't afford EVs.
Mr. Rogers fears, however, the money being sent to China for the lithium batteries needed to build EVs is only being used by the communists to build up their military arsenal at the expense of the United States.
Anytime you climb in bed with the Communist Party of China, somebody's not going to get a good night's sleep. 85% of everything that's in that electric car is processed in China. That is not good for the long-term economics of the United States or our national security.
Mr. Rogers, who drives a hybrid, argues that those vehicles would do more to improve the air quality than one EV, and at the same time, it would save UAW jobs.
You can save the environment with 90 hybrids a lot easier than you can even with one EV, and it doesn't jeopardize 30,000 UAW workers' jobs.
And the Republican candidate sides with the Democratic UAW president on pushing this issue with the Detroit Three.
And I hope Fain continues to use his clout, his new gain clout, to make sure we have a reasonable and rational discussion about how you move forward.
For example, Mr. Rogers, moving forward, does favor electrifying city buses, taxi cabs, and other big city transportation. But at the end of the day, he argues, the auto consumer should have choices. And forcing everybody into an EV won't work.
They're saying everyone's going to be driving an electric car in 2030.
You don't believe that?
I don't believe that. Do you believe that?
In Lansing, Tim Skubic, Fox 2 News.